Girona way back in October. That is why we see them now fourth in the table. They are having a standout season, and as it stands, they are just a point behind Barcelona, who do play Sevilla tomorrow. So we'll see how things shape up after that. But let's get you some post-match reaction from El Derby today. Let's hear from both of the coaches, Ancelotti and Simeone.
Hubo un penal igual en el partido de hoy a la tarde de Bilbao-Girona, si no me equivoco. Y bueno, nada, y el árbitro tuvo la misma situación, lo llamó al VAR, fue todo parecido.
Quería preguntarle por la acción del 0-1 de Atlético de Madrid, ese penalti, ¿cómo lo has visto?
No, pasa.
¿No quieres hablar del árbitro?
No.
¿Por algún motivo?
No quiero, simplemente.
No quiero. Is that what's dominated the post-match presses then, Sid, that penalty today in El Derby?
Actually, mercifully, no. Obviously, it was there and it was asked about, and it's very much going to be on the agenda tomorrow, and it was tonight. But mercifully, it wasn't the only thing in that press conference. Ancelotti said something quite interesting. He talked about the nature of that penalty. He said that it's a penalty that the VAR sees. The VAR sees the tread on the foot, but the referee is in a very good position to see it. And he said that people in football don't understand this penalty. That was his argument. I think what he's trying to say, obviously, is that in the event in which something like this happens and a referee gets a good view of it, he doesn't see the need or any reason to take it to VAR. Now, obviously, of course, that's conditioned by the fact that he's the Real Madrid manager and is going against his team. But I must admit, I do have a degree of sympathy for that. This is a penalty that, for me, is the kind of penalty I don't like seeing given at all. But I admit that rulebook in hand, it's going to be given.
It's interesting, though, Sid, because Ale brought up the little penaltitos. This is exactly an example of that we thought we weren't going to see in La Liga.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, though. I mean, I suppose in general, there's a risk now where I go off on one about VAR.
On Samuel Lino, as it is enhanced now.
Well,
but my point actually on that, Sid, would be the fact that we have it enhanced and we still have questions. That's when clear and obvious really comes into the conversation.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree with you on that, and I think it is problematic because we argue about what's clear and obvious. And as I say, I think the foot on the foot for me was clear in the one and only replay I say, and I absolutely have to bow to you looking at their enhanced. I haven't seen it there enhanced, but if the referee sees it, then presumably he sees that particular action. I also have a problem with the nature of VAR in that what happens is that we freeze frame things, and we see something really clear that in real time isn't clear. And in terms of the nature of the game, isn't clear. And I have a problem with that, I must admit. And it's not about tonight. It's a kind of a conceptual thing. And I think that while obviously Ancelotti is saying this in the context of his own team being the ones that have that penalty given up against him, I think that idea that, well, hang on, why are we going to a VAR screen if a referee's there and has seen it, albeit obviously there's always the potential that the referee hasn't seen it, I kind of agree with that conceptually. And as I say, having only seen the one replay and having seen it very quick and on a small screen in the stadium while everything else is going on, and therefore not being able to argue with you in terms of what you actually see, it seemed to me to be one of those where I thought to myself, quite honestly, I don't want that given as a penalty in any game, but I understand why it was.
All right, Sid, we'll let you talk a little bit about the football that you saw tonight. Then what did we learn from the latest derby between these two sides?
That's quite a good question, because I don't know what we learned, what was new. I think what we saw was that Atletico Madrid, I thought, controlled the game really well in the first half. But I felt that they lacked the precision in either the last pass or the penultimate pass. It wasn't that, to me, that they should have been leading by more than 1-0 because they'd had loads of shots, because Courtois had made loads of saves. In fact, I think I'd be right in saying that Courtois didn't make any. That they'd been racking up the shot count, that they'd had really clear chances, but they'd had loads, from my point of view at least, or sufficiently enough in a derby anyway, 3 or 4 really good situations in which they probably should have created that clear chance to score, and they didn't. People would slip, the last pass was overhit, they would snatch at a shot. They didn't have that clarity that we've seen them have this season. And I felt that was a problem that was a problem for them all the way through the game, because I'm talking now about the first half and them doing that. But in the second half, they had at least 3 times when they escaped up the right wing, and 3 times when really and truly one of those you've got to be scoring from. Not because any of them are really clear chances, but because they didn't provide that final pass. And I think there was a temptation from them to sit back and let Madrid come to them and try and counter-attack, which now with the draw, we'd say, well, why didn't you go for them? But I think had they got those moves right, we might be thinking, well, they picked them off brilliantly. Because I actually felt their ability to come out from the back, their ability to withstand a bit of pressure and build those counter-attacks was really, really good. So what we learned there was maybe they lacked the clarity. I think what we learned with Real Madrid is that they're still alive. And I think at half-time, one of the things that really struck me, I don't know how well this came across on your screens. At half-time, when the teams went off, there was a brief whistle for the referee, just because kind of there always is in Spain. We know that. That's just the way it is. And after a penalty like that, of course, all the more so. And in the context of all of the talk about the referee this week, even more so again. But you know what? More than anything else that struck me at half-time, the noise was silence. There was no atmosphere. There was no sense of kind of fighting back. There was no sense of rebellion. There was no sense of, come on, we've got to get back at these guys. There was a kind of a resignation that this is sort of all Real Madrid are. And this is kind of what's going to happen. The game's just going to drift. But then once they'd scored, they did react. And then we saw that Madrid team that we think is more like Real Madrid going at Atletico Madrid. Now, I personally would argue, I don't know how it felt to you watching it, that it didn't last very long. But we had maybe 20 minutes of Real Madrid really going at Atletico, creating chances, and it didn't last all the way to the end, although there was a couple of late chances as well. But I think from Ancelotti's point of view, he will be very pleased that he saw a team that was committed, where there was effort, and when players were doing the tracking back and going at their opponents. And for the Manchester City game, which of course is the key thing here in terms of learning something or drawing conclusions from this game, from the Man City game, you look at this tonight and you think, okay, they can get through against City.
Oh, I'd hazard a guess there'll be plenty of noise coming about the referees tomorrow from this part of Madrid, Sid. A little bit of a tough question for you last here. Who was the man of the match today?
That is quite a tough question. I mean, obviously, look, this game was built up, as you saw, with the front page headline of the Ninja Turtle and the Spider-Man, Alvarez and Mbappe, and they both scored. And they both scored on their first derby at the Bernabeu, so you could talk about those two. But I didn't think either of them had particularly great games. I liked, as I said, Atletico Madrid's ability to attack up the right and to create chances. Not so much with Simeone, but with the two fullbacks. Well, it was Llorente and then Nowell, who came on and played as kind of an extra fullback or a winger. I thought they both played well. I think the best player for me was probably Jude Bellingham.
Jude Bellingham for you. Who'd you say, Ale?
Well, the biggest question coming into this match from Real Madrid's perspective was what was going to happen in this back line that had a bunch of guys that honestly none of them would have been playing to begin the season, certainly as starters. I thought Raúl Asensio was really good today, really solid, and using his speed to be able to match Julian Alvarez. He was able to cut out some danger, so in that sense, he was good. I had questions about Dani Ceballos, and while he wasn't always great with the ball at his feet, you saw a whole lot of work rate from him. But in terms of the totality of the game, while I would concede that Bellingham was involved in most of the dangerous things that Real Madrid created, Fede Valverde, who you can put him anywhere on the field, and he will do a job for you. And honestly, it is a good question to ask and a fair question to ask. Are they better off with Fede Valverde as a right back and then kind of put numbers around in the midfield? Or is he better off in the midfield because he's going to cover a whole lot of ground? And that is a question that Ancelotti is going to have to figure out, because they have a major hole in that right back position with Lucas Vázquez.
Yeah, obviously all eyes on the game against Man City. Sid, we're going to let you go and get some rest because we expect to be talking to you a lot more about referees in the coming weeks. So sorry about that, mate, but you know how it goes.